All right. Hey guys. Today is my first night of my Soma Breath retreat here. It's my Soma Awakening retreat. I have been working toward this for like a year and a half, even though I didn't really know it all at the time. This is the capstone for my transformation arc right before the August solar eclipse on my North node, my Karma node. These past 6 months have been really intense. The February eclipse hit my south node, and this eclipse hit my north node. So this is a once in an 8-year transition and purging and life reorientation cycle. And I have been diving as hard into it as I possibly can and putting literally everything I have to do the deep inner work that I have to do. And just being here, getting ready to start. It definitely feels like a death. There's a part of me that knows it's here to die. And I'm not talking about suicide or anything. I'm talking about like from a tantric death, like tantric death lineage of death of the ego, death of the false self, like a spiritual type of death. And I just feel that I don't walk out of here the same person. And Santa Muerte gave me a choice. And I told her I wanted to heal before I died. Way back when this started, she gave me a choice. And I said yes. And ever since then, she's shown me a little more of what it would require, and I've continued to say yes. And here I am the night before, crying in a hotel in Austria because she's given me the thing I asked for, and it's really painful, even after a year and a half of preparing for it. I've done quite literally like a master's degree in terms of certifications and formal coursework in yoga and psychology and meditation and nervous system mechanics. But at the end of the day, you still have to use the knowledge. And no one else understands it like I do. at least not as it's applied to me. But I have to kill the man that I am so I can become the man that the child needed. And this is the last step. So before I start this process of dying tomorrow, it's going to be like a 5 or 6 day process, just however long the retreat's going to run. And this is actually how we opened the retreat. I want to tell my story of how I got here. The full story. Because somewhere out there, there's someone else that needs to hear it. You go get a towel. Okay. Enough of that. So, it was actually the first question they asked us when we all got in the circle at the welcome table. Was, tell us how you got here. Niraj only gave us 3 minutes. So I literally got out my phone and started the timer app to see how much of this I could say in 3 minutes. It was not a lot. But I want to talk through, and let me get out my notes. I want to talk through my childhood and the parts of me that I'm here to kill. Part of my belief system and part of my religion is that, and this is critically important for me to set up, and it drives why I'm doing this, is that it's a form of parts work, if you're familiar with IFS, which stems from a mixture of some Buddhism and some Northern African spiritual traditions. Western psychology just loves stealing other religions for psychological frameworks and then rebranding it and saying you have to have the Western cert in order for it to be valid, even though they didn't invent it and other people have been practicing it for centuries, if not thousands of years, which is just how you make money in the West. You go and steal someone else's shit and call it your own. That's all AI is. but it's a form of parts work. High level, there are 3 different energies or personalities within every different person. Each of them has different traits and characteristics based on who they are, how their life went, but there's 3 general, like, broad categories of energies. Everyone has a part of them that is divine. It is their angelic self. It is their part that is connected to the divine consciousness. It is the light inside each and every one of us that connects all of creation. Then there is, I sort of call that the angel part, right? So everyone has an angel part. But then everyone also has a demon part. Your demon part is there to protect you, to do the things that the angel part would never do. The demon part is the part that if a tiger's cornering you, it's going to grab a knife and kill the tiger to save your life, because the angel would never kill the tiger. It's the part that if you're starving, it's going to steal the loaf of bread to keep you alive, even though the angel would never steal the loaf of bread. It's the part that will do whatever it takes to keep you alive. And most people think that that's all there is. You've got your white and your black, your yin and your yang. But there's a third part, and it's your trauma part. And whereas your angelic part determines your purpose in life, and to a large extent the path you take to realizing your purpose, right? As your soul's on this never-ending journey towards self-actualization through the reincarnation cycle, your demon part is there to protect your soul in the best way it knows how to do. Because your demon part's the one that's going to survive going through hell. Angels don't survive hell on their own. Demons survive hell because that's what they do. But your demons are there to protect, to balance out your traumas. Traumas are all the shit that happens to you in your life. And they're painful. Just like in the gym, pumping those weights, building that muscle, shit's painful. Tearing the muscle just the right amount every day, over and over again. That's how you get big. Same thing with life. You get little bitty micro traumas, and those traumas force you to grow and adapt. If you were the fat kid in high school, then you grow up to be the bodybuilder because your demon's trying to protect you from the trauma of being fat. If you grow up food insecure and money insecure, you grow up valuing money and getting a high-paying job because it's a protection mechanism. And at the end of the day, your protection mechanisms are the things that are most visible to everyone else. But your traumas dictate how you bond with other people. If you haven't integrated your traumas, or they're still running amok because you've got too many, you just cycle through a series of attachment bonds that feel really intense, but then just cause increasing amounts of damage because they're not stable, healthy connections. And if you're someone like me that has had a mountain full of trauma, then you've got a lot of integrating to do. A lot of integrating. Because until you actually deal with that trauma, your demon's still going to be protecting you from it. The only way your demon can stand down is if you work through and bring your trauma inside the fold. And then your demon can start working with you instead of against you. It's kind of like the Native American tale where within all of us there's a white wolf and a black wolf, and the one that grows stronger is the one you feed. Except I don't believe in starving either half. There are no bad parts. There was a long time when when those parts of me were the only thing keeping me alive. But part of becoming the man that no longer needs them is doing the work to integrate the traumas into them. So, I guess the best place to start is the beginning. So I was born in 1989 to Greg and Randy Burnett. Greg was an electrician. He graduated high school, went to electrician at HVAC school, tried to start his own company called Butler Rural Electric. Randy was sort of like the wife bookkeeper. He went out and made the money. That didn't go horribly well. He then went and got hired at Miami University to work in their steam plant, their coal plant. And then Randy just worked stocking groceries at the grocery store in the frozen food section. And then she did taxes during tax season. High level of them. Greg, from everything I understand, had a normal-ish childhood. His parents were Dory and Maxine. Dory died when I was like 1 year old. I have a few memories of him. I can't really picture his face, but I can remember he made me this little chair out in the garage, just out of like some spare scraps of wood. And whenever I was over, like I would sit next to him because he had this armchair right in the living room where he'd watch TV. And he sat me right next to him to watch TV right next to him when I was like 1. And I just sat there and watched TV with him because he just wanted me right next to him. And then I remember one time I came home. No, sorry. One time I came to Nanny's, their house, and he gave me $1. I was like, oh boy, I'm rich. I have a whole dollar, just like kids are. I have so much money. I have a whole dollar. And I guess I never really realized how much, looking back, like I knew he loved me because he spent time with me and he invested in me. It wasn't just the money. It was the money was just sort of the way it was symbolized. But it was that he cared enough. But yeah, Greg was raised by Nanny and Dory, only child. From everything I know, nothing bad happened. I don't really know much about him. I'll get into that later. Randy, however, Randy was also an only child. She had an extra, and I'm going to go into details about Randy because I believe this applies to her as well. I'm going to be talking about some really heavy shit, especially when it comes to her. And her, but I just want to be clear that I do fully see her as a person, even if she's not a person capable of loving me or being in any form of a healthy relationship. I don't condone what she did, but I acknowledge that there are parts of her that are not what she became. She just never did the work. Because Randy's story, and I want to start here. She was born to Tom and Brenda. Tom Jones, and Brenda was her mother. Tom was a Vietnam vet, atheist. He won some very special medal in the military. I don't know what it was, because he called in an airdrop on his own position in order to save his men, and somehow miraculously survived. So he got a very special award for that. I don't know what it is. But a lot of people respected him because he did that. But he was also extremely abusive to Brenda and to Randy. She was their only child. And growing up, she was raped by his brother, John Paul Jones. I believe more than once. I know this because when I was in elementary school, she got called into court to testify because he had raped another girl and they were finally going after him. And there was just like a string of women that they just brought into court to testify that, yeah, like he raped me too. Like Me Too before it was Me Too. I'm going to talk about that later. And then she developed a lot of emotional problems from the physical abuse from Tom. I don't really know what happened with Brenda. She never really talked about that. I don't think Brenda was an angel either, but Brenda was more emotional than like other types of stuff. She ended up getting kicked out, going through the foster system. Brenda fucked her over it. I don't know all the details. I just know what I'm told from bits and pieces. She didn't graduate high school. She dropped out. Started working as a waitress. But the tragedy of her was that the only thing she ever wanted was a family. So, but she got into drugs because that's how she coped. Met Greg, my father, working a waitress. I think it was a Waffle House. I want to say it was a Waffle House. I could be wrong. They hit it off, started dating, and then they got married. Like I think like shortly after they found out they were pregnant with the one before me. because she got pregnant. I think they got married. Then she miscarried. Then later on, she got pregnant with me. And she had not, and I was, from what I was told, I was a very rough pregnancy. I was a month premature. Um, she was not fully off of all of the substances that she was using to cope. I remember being told that when I was born, like from being a month premature, like they could barely, like I barely fit in less like the palms of their hands. Like I was so tiny. And from what I was told, like just being a month premature, I was constantly sick. I couldn't breastfeed, couldn't have normal formula. They had to basically feed me a very special infant formula that they couldn't afford, and so the pediatrician had to keep giving them samples from like the doctor's office just to keep me alive. Obviously, I don't remember any of this. It's just what her and Brenda and Nanny told me. Nanny was it's what I call Greg's mom, Maxine. So growing up, apparently, because from what I was told, because like I was such a hassle, Nanny would take care of me every weekend. They'd drop me off at Nanny's house. Nanny and I bonded really hard because when I was very young, like 1 year old or something, her husband Dory died. Um, Freak accident. Was driving home from work, swallowed some Pepsi down the wrong tube just from drinking a Pepsi in the car. His lungs went into spontaneous pneumonia, and he drowned pretty soon after he walked in the door. And was dead before the ambulance got there. Just died drinking Pepsi. Complete freak accident. He kind of cheated death once before, though, because he was technically a Korean War veteran. He was drafted, and he was on the boat over to be deployed when they signed the armistice. So he was like a day away from actually facing combat, but got full benefits because like he was technically deployed while it happened. But he never actually saw combat in it. But yeah, so because of that, Nanny was heartbroken and alone. And she was my mother. Nanny was. I'm told Randy did her best. I don't remember any of it. All I remember is all the pain that Randy gave me. And all the good memories were from Nanny. For example, when I was a toddler, and this is, I think, my very first, because I start getting memories around Dory. I remember him giving me $1. I remember, like I said, the chair. And then, like, shortly thereafter, Randy and Greg ran out of money. They always had money problems. They were always moving, partly because of money and partly because of children's services. But I remember and this is a weird memory because some of the memories I have, I'm not seeing them through my own eyes. I'm seeing them from like a different pair of eyes from across the room sometimes, and where I'm looking back and seeing me. and everything is just much more vivid. But I remember they had moved into the garage apartment at Nanny's house, because Nanny lived in the country. She lived in Shandon, right? Shandon is about an hour north of Cincinnati, right in the country. Her neighbors were a soybean farmer across the road, and then she had like another neighbor that raised horses, and she was always constantly mad because the neighbor's horses would get loose like every few weeks and then just come start eating her flowers, especially her petunias. And then she'd look out the window and just start yelling at the horses, and then try to go yell at the neighbor to come get his horses to save her flowers. She hated those horses. Well, she didn't mind the horses. It's not their fault. They're animals. She hated that Mike did not take care of his horses and actually like fenced them in to where they would stop getting out. Mike just did not want to put in the work to raise those horses. But she lived in a trailer on about an acre of land that Dory had inherited. And she had a really big garage. So there was a 2-bedroom trailer with another closet converted into a 3rd bedroom where Grandma Reed stayed. Grandma Reed was Nanny's mother. So she was my great grandmother, and all of her kids took turns like taking care of her until like in her old age. So she'd like spend like a month at each kid's house and cycle, and they'd all take their turns taking care of her. So she was over at Nanny's house sometimes. I never really liked Grandma Reed because Grandma Reed hated me because I got more attention from Nanny than she did. I remember one time we were at dinner and Grandma Reed asked Nanny, "Why are you cutting up his corn?" And she's like, "Because he's a kid." She's like, "Why don't you cut up my corn?" And she's like, "Come on, Mom, you can do it." And Grandma Reed then just looked at me. But anyway, yeah, so Nanny lived in a trailer, but she also had this very large garage where the tractor would be and the air compressor and all the stuff, because just out in the country, you just had that stuff. Big garage. And then there was the outhouse. There was the well, like, what's it? It was like a little a shed built on top of where the well used to be before they had to cap the well because of Fernald. This memory doesn't want to come out. But in the in the garage, part of it was converted into like a little studio apartment. There's a fridge, there's a little range, there's a bed in there, desk, a closet. And when I was really little, the first time they moved in with Nanny, they moved into that little garage apartment. And I remember I was laying in my crib screaming. I don't know why, but the memory isn't from my first person. The memory is for me looking almost as if I'm standing on another side of the room. And Greg comes home, it's dark. Randy is high out of her mind and just chain lighting cigarettes over and over. Greg freaks the fuck out. Screams that she's going to burn the whole place down. They have a fight. Then he walks over, grabs me while I'm still crying, and just takes me out. And he got a little apartment in Oxford where he worked. I think this one is when he still did Butler Rural Electric. It was right above the Baskin Robbins that used to be there on High Street in Oxford. Just like a little studio. And it was right around Halloween. Because I remember we did the whole bed sheet thing. He got a sheet, just cut the holes out of it to make eye holes, and put it over me, and I was a ghost for Halloween, and he took me around Oxford to go get candy. And to this day, that is the only memory I have of Greg actually loving me and taking care of me. Is that one Halloween. We were only there a couple of months until he went back to her. She never got better. Shortly after that, we moved. It was in Riley, just before you get to Oxford. Uh, the landlady's name was Mrs. S. It was a duplex. That's where my brother John was born. Also, full story. When I'm talking about me as a kid, I talk about John. Later on, John came out as trans and male to female, and then switched their name to Stacy. But in my head, I was very much raised with a little brother, and my little brother became my little sister when they came out and transitioned, because I was not raised with a sister. I don't know how else to explain that. So, like, as we get into adulthood, the name's going to switch from John to Stacy. But while we're in childhood, it is very much John. Then John was born at Mrs. S's. At the time, I had Tourette's, I had tics, I had ADHD, or what they called ADHD at the time. School was a struggle. The constant running to the doctor never really stopped my entire adolescence for one reason or another. And the core line that's just ingrained in me from all those doctor's trips was just Randy taking me to the doctor and just holding me out there and just saying, "What's wrong with it?" What's wrong with it? And most of the times the doctors didn't know. Like the first time I had a cold sore, I was running. I'm told I was running like 105-degree fever. Putting me in a cold tub didn't work, so they ran me to the hospital and couldn't figure out for the life of me why I was running that high of a fever. And that was like when I was like 1 or 2 years old. And the best they can figure is because either Nanny or Mo kissed me because they had cold sores, and that's just randomly how I got it. So yeah, like almost died from herpes, like the kissing cold sore herpes, like when I was a kid, just because my grandmother kissed me. One of them, they never figured out which one it was. It's probably for the best, but it was a giant scare. But like I said, there was always something wrong with me as a child. I didn't realize it until later that so much of it was her. So why am I going into this? I'm going into this because when you go through a trauma, your body learns a lesson, because your body is constantly, in your mind and your soul is constantly searching for meaning, because it needs meaning in order to protect you from future occurrences. So a trauma occurs. If it is too big that you can't integrate it and work through it in the moment, then it gets stored in your body, in your fascia. And it sort of becomes a permanent loop in your personality. Traumas are not stored fully in the mind. Like the memory is stored in the mind, but the trauma and like the memory engram is stored in the fascia throughout your muscles and your body, depending on what happened or what muscle tensed up during it, which is why you have to go through the body during yin yoga and through breath work while you're reprocessing, or else you're just treating the memory and you're not treating the trauma. And that's why therapy alone is so ineffective. Therapy only deals with the mind, and that's only half of the equation. That's not even the most important half. Took me years to learn that. But the core lesson I learned from Greg going back to Randy is that I wasn't worth protecting. Because my father wouldn't protect me. Because he did, and then he chose to stop. Yeah, Randy was always abusive or neglectful or high. There were times when she tried to be a good mom, because like I said, the only thing she ever really wanted was a family, because hers was completely broken. There were times when she'd want to go to Kings Island, make cupcakes for school. Remember, she used to always read us a nightmare the night before Christmas. Sorry, the night before Christmas, on Christmas Eve, from a little like book that was a pillow, like like it wasn't a paper book, it was made out of fabric, almost like a quilt book that you would turn up the pages on, that she would read from that pillow book every Christmas Eve. And she'd do cookies and she'd do Christmas presents. There was a part of her that really wanted to be a good mom. That part just wasn't in control. Ever. When she would do drugs, she would hallucinate and just take it all out on me. Especially more and more as I got older. When I was younger, from what I was told, she was just exhausted running me to the doctors, and that's when I was at Nanny's house and Nanny raised me. But then the older I got, the more abusive she got. That caused me to have a whole bunch of my own problems as well. And when John was born, I remember the doctor said that not to even let me hold him because they thought I would hurt him. And I remember them bringing him home and me just being locked in the room. And all I wanted to do was take care of him. And I couldn't. And that was another trauma that stuck with me. Was that I'm not good enough to take care of my little brother. It took me until very recently to work through that one. After Mrs. S's, they moved to a bigger place on Fairfield Road in Oxford. It was behind what's now a Kroger, but they've redone that whole part of town by now. I remember Brenda moved in with us then. She had her own room. Brenda was always constantly having financial problems as well. Brenda had her own room in the house. John and I shared a room. And it was really weird. There was a toy room. Like when they bought the place, there's a room off to the side with just full of like really dirty old plastic toys. They always used to want us to go in there and play with the toys, but I didn't understand why. There was also a rusted merry-go-round in the backyard. This is when I was in Talawanda School District. That was when I remember the children's services stuff started becoming frequent. They got called on for me. And then later on, Randy chased John outside the house while John was screaming butt naked out around the neighborhood, just chasing him with a chicken limbo stick. Chicken limbo was like this little toy in the 90s that was like limbo, only it was like a limbo game, only it was like a red chicken like in the center, and you had to bend low enough to not tilt the chicken, because like the chicken was, so like the bar was here and the chicken ran vertically in the tail, and you had to like limbo low enough to not tip the tail, and if you bent the tail over, the chicken would squawk and then you failed. So it wasn't as much don't hit the limbo stick, it was don't make the chicken go squawk. It was called chicken limbo. And the little like legs of the game were like chicken feet. I don't know why. Weirdest toy I remember was chicken limbo. But no, like that was because they got a complaint from my teachers from something they saw on me at school. And then later, like some multiple neighbors called in because Randy was just running around outside screaming, chasing my naked like 3-year-old brother down and then just spanking him ridiculously hard with this plastic rod from this chicken limbo stick. butt naked in the front yard. That was Randy. Then after Fairfield Road, they moved back into Nanny's again. This time because we had John Nanny moved into the garage apartment, and we lived in her house. And it was at least nice because John and I had our own rooms. John took Grandma Reed's room. Grandma Reed had passed away by that point, I think, or maybe they just stayed at a different thing. I don't remember exactly when Grandma Reed died, but John lived in Grandma Reed's room in like that little closet, and then I got one of the big bedrooms, the winter bedroom, because it was the one that had the insulation, and then Randy and Greg lived in the summer bedroom, which was like an add-on that was like built to expand the trailer. So there, like it's like there was the trailer, and then they added on like this extra shed to encase it to add an extra living room and an extra bedroom to the trailer. And so they slept in that one, and that was in Harrison School District. And we were there for a year. Nothing really bad happened there because Nanny was living right there. I remember things stabilized somewhat. But then that year living with Nanny and her just being right next door, after that ended, they moved to Island Lake Trailer Park over in McGonigal, which is right before you get to Oxford. And that's just when life became hell. Life became complete hell. Randy started doing opioids to cope. She started hallucinating a lot more. And she just started getting sick and twisted. I remember this one time I woke up and came to breakfast, and there were like these little frozen pancakes that she got from the grocery store, and she was just microwaving the frozen pancakes. She gave John and I each a plate of pancakes, but then she gave one bottle of syrup to John, and she gave another bottle of syrup to me. But the bottle of syrup she gave to me had ants crawling in it. She had let it sit out so ants could come and collect the syrup, and I could see them still crawling in it. And I remember just being like, I don't want to eat that, and her trying to tell me, oh, it's good for you, it's protein. I remember this was 5th grade because I went to Stewart Elementary, the trailer park. In Talawanda for 5th grade, because I was the 5th grade school. And I just got scared and panicked and started crying and just said, "No, I don't want to eat the bugs." And then she just started yelling at me. So I ran back to my room and just started crying and hiding under the covers. And then I just felt things hitting me from the back as she just grabbed the boxes of the frozen pancakes and was just like throwing like the rock hard blocks of ice as hard as she could and just hitting my back while I was crying and screaming underneath the blanket. Saying, "Here you go, eat your fucking pancakes." The trailer park was hell. Greg was working a ton of overtime to even try to afford the trailer. Greg always worked overtime. He didn't want to deal with it. I do remember the trailer park is where Greg bought me my first computer. Greg loved computers. He thought they were so cool. He gave me my own desktop when I was in 5th grade to start learning how to make it work. I remember playing, there was a little Mario game on MS-DOS that I started with. Greg cared when it didn't require him to do anything. Just the truth. I remember one time I came home from school. Randy was high. I walked in the kitchen to get like a Kool-Aid out of the fridge. And she just started screaming at me. And then I just went to go like, I was standing right in front of the sink and I was just staring at her, like not knowing what to do. And then she just picked up a knife and just chucked it at me. And it flew straight near my ear and broke the window right in front of the sink. Like almost just hit me. And Greg never fixed the window. Never fixed it. Greg actually blamed me. One time when things got bad and she stormed off because she didn't get too bad because he was there at the moment, he turned around to me and said, "Why are you doing this?" And then he just grabbed me and threw me across the kitchen. And I remember my back skidding and then my head hitting the cabinet right under the sink. Because he didn't know how to deal with it. Not knowing how to protect myself, that also bit me in the ass of the trailer park. Because it was standard white trash like poverty rules. Like, I just wanted to be a really nice kid, follow all the rules. Danny always had me in church every Sunday and every Wednesday for Sunday school and Wednesday school. I remember going to the bus stop there, and little kids like half my size would just cuss me out and pick on me. And I just took it, just because I was so terrified of being a bad kid. There was just a part of me that deeply believed my entire life that if I could just be good enough, that all the pain would stop. That if I just prayed harder, if I followed the rules, that if I turned the other cheek, that if I was the good boy, that they'd love me, that I'd have friends, that things would be better. And I just never hit back. I mean, I was really heavy as a kid because being born a month premature, Nanny just kept constantly feeding me. It's just all she did. Like, before church meals on Sunday would be, I remember I'd eat oatmeal with some milk and sugar in my little green bowl. And then she'd make me like 6 slices of toast. It was butternut toast, butternut bread she got from the butternut outlet store in Ross before it closed, and Country Crock margarine. And I'd eat that every morning, every Sunday, uh, while watching the cartoons on TV. It was Transformers Beast Wars and Spider Man and X Men. That was on Sunday morning. It's actually funny, like, I never saw the car Transformers. For me, growing up, it was Beast Wars. So the first time I went to a Transformers movie, I was really confused because I was like, why are they cars? They're supposed to be animals. But anyway, Nanny always just fed me. And then because the doctors thought at that time I had ADHD, I probably did. And for the Tourette's, they had me on like Risperdal and all sorts of other stuff, and like clonidine and Clonopin. And there was one of them that I remember, I don't remember, but it just made me gain weight. You know, I was really fat for a kid. I remember I was in husky jeans when I was in the trailer park. I was just like this little fat, awkward, autistic kid, just trying to be a good boy, just letting himself get chased down and beat up just because I was so afraid that if I fought back, I'd be bad. I didn't want to be bad. But it just never worked. I could never be good enough. I could never be good enough. It just, if I couldn't run home fast enough for the bus stop in the afternoon, I would just pray to those kids. If I couldn't run home fast enough, they'd just knock me down and just start kicking me in the balls. While I'm just laying there crying and trying to take it. Randy and Greg didn't do shit. I remember this one time at Valentine's Day. I was literally so lonely. I handwrote on every Valentine's Day card, like little card thing with like a little candy sucker I gave to the class that year. Will you be my friend? Because it was so hard to make friends. In hindsight, I understand that I was autistic and suffering from PTSD, and that just completely stunted my emotional development and made it impossible for me to connect with kids. But at the time, all I felt was alone. And the only person in the whole world that loved me was Nanny. And the only thing that made that trailer park year bearable, because it was just 1 year, was that every morning I'd wake up. Greg would wake me up before he went to work. And then I'd get out of my bed. I had bunk beds with John at the trailer park. I was on the top bunk. Then I'd get up and then go lie on the couch because I was still tired and it was way too early. And then Nanny would call me every morning and wake me up again so I could catch the bus. While Randy was still high and or zonked out and passed out from the night before. And when I was little, there used to be a song we used to sing to each other on the phone every time we talked. It was it's it's silly, but it was just the Barney song from the Barney the Dinosaur. She'd sing the first verse, and then I'd sing the second verse. I love you. You love me. We're a happy family with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say I love you too? That was her verse. Did I do I love you? You love me. We're best friends like friends should be. With a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? And then she'd always say, I love you, Chris. And I'd say, I love you, Nanny. That's how we hung up the phone every morning. That was the only thing that got me through that year. Just to not jump straight from trauma to trauma. Fun fact about Ohio. Ohio is racist as fuck. You have no godly idea. Fifth grade, Stewart Elementary. There was a picture of the former sheriff that the school was named after, hanging on at the top of the front steps of the school. And we were all told that that sheriff was famous for when the Civil Rights Act was passed. He stood on the front steps with a shotgun and said no black kids were coming in this school. And so they named the school for him and made sure even afterward that in like the 1990s, we all knew that's what the school was named for. The racist fucking sheriff. That's Ohio. Yep. They tore the school down a couple decades, about a decade ago. There's a plaque now in a shopping center to remember what the school was. That was fifth grade. Then Randy and Greg moved again. And this time they moved to Oakmont Drive in Hamilton. Oakmont was on the outer edges of the west side, right before you get to the main road to get out of town toward Ross. And it was the first time John and I were in the same school. It was the only time. We went to Monroe Elementary. So let's talk sixth grade. Sixth grade, I am in Mrs. Arnold's sixth grade class. That whole year, so much happened that year. And John is in Mrs. Ferris's first grade class down the hall. So I'm the big brother. I'm there to get him up, get him cereal in the morning, get him, make sure we get to school and back. Because Monroe Elementary was just a few blocks up the road. So we didn't actually have to take a bus at all. We just walked to school because it was like a 20-minute walk. So it wasn't bad. I also remember Mr. Peters, my music teacher from Monroe. It's weird. I think this was so bad. That's why I have so many vivid memories. And I could just still see the people and the faces from what happened there. I remember that's where 9/11 happened. When it was happening, they took the fifth and sixth graders and they moved us into one of the other sixth grade teachers' classes and put on the news and had us watch it with us while the teachers were freaking out. Where kids were like, we don't know what's going on, but a plane just ran into a building and all the teachers don't seem to like it. But yeah, September 11th was shortly after school started, obviously, because school started in like end of August. Then it was September 11th. Then shortly after that, I was at church with Nanny. I was on the. It was at a little small country church near her house called the Book of Acts Tabernacle. Um, for most of my life, I went with Nanny to Hamilton Christian Center with under Pastor Sloan because she cleaned his house and she cleaned the church, and that's how she got by with money wise, was by cleaning the pastor's house, cleaning the church. She pretty much cleaned the church for free, but she got paid to clean the pastor's house, and so that was enough for her to live off of. She didn't have much money after Dory died. Remember, Pastor Sloan always used to call her the Buzz because she cleaned so fast. But at one point, she got too old and couldn't handle all the stairs in the church anymore. So Pastor Sloan let her go because she just couldn't keep doing the whole church for free. But she also loved God and she didn't mind doing it. So maybe I'm just projecting a little bit too much. I was young and I don't know the full details of the arrangement. Nanny was about as Christian as you could possibly be, which is why she had me like in Sunday school and Wednesday school from my entire life. So maybe I'm being too harsh. But anyway, it was because she left, she couldn't handle the stairs anymore, that she moved to the Book of Acts Tabernacle, or the Boat, which was this non-denominational but Pentecostal church right up the road from her. Hamilton Christian Center was mainline evangelical. They had the nice choir, they had the social areas. It wasn't in a denomination, but it was normal-ish. I remember I had a lot of fun in the kids' church. I used to love the Easter egg hunts. But I remember one year we did an Easter egg hunt, and it was with Pastor Wendell, and I found the golden egg, and I won $50. And I was like, oh boy, I have so much money. I have $50. $50 is a lot to like a third grade kid. Because I found the golden egg. Is when I remember. I still remember that. I just sort of had this like arrow inside of me that as soon as like they said go, like they hid eggs all over the church, and like especially the kids' church area, there was a gigantic large auditorium, and then there was like a 2-story like Sunday school layer with like 12 rooms on each side of the hall, down 2 stories. Like it was a huge like recreational church. And I just remember like I got up and I just walked straight to where the golden egg was. I just knew where it was. I just had in my mind, I want the golden egg. And then just like this arrow took me straight there. And it was underneath the teacher's desk in one of the Sunday school rooms. I just walked straight there, walked in, looked under the desk and grabbed it. And that was the first egg I picked up that whole Easter egg hunt because I wanted the $50. Hamilton Christian Center was okay. Wendell Conning, that was his name. Wendell Conning. He was a really good children's pastor. But anyway, so Book of Acts Tabernacle. So at this point, I'm in sixth grade. I never liked the boat. I never liked all the Pentecostal, charismatic style yelling and worship, and just felt like collective delusion. It wasn't necessarily like the speaking in tongues and getting slain in the spirit. Like, I could feel like energy moving and like there was something there. It was just the energy just felt gross from the pastor. Whenever I was around Wayne Pace, the pastor that owned the church, because he just started the church because that's just what he wanted to do. He was independently wealthy from like a small business thing that he sold off, and just decided, well, I'm going to go be a pastor, so I'm going to build a church literally in my backyard and just start my own church. I just always felt like an energetic slime oozing from him the entire time, and I just never liked being there. His sister Lois that he lived with, because she was okay. She was nice. She played the piano and did like the worship stuff, and he did the sermons. But I never liked Wayne Pace. But I'm there one Wednesday night in sixth grade. I was on the sign language team. It was like an expressive worship team where we learned sign language to worship songs and then like performed them up in front. We wore like all black and had like white sashes and white gloves. But Nanny had picked me up after school to bring me to that because that was before Wednesday church. We did that. And I remember just somewhere along the way during church, I just started shaking. Like I had Tourette's before, I had tics, like I would chirp or I would blink or whatever. It wasn't that. It would start off as just a tremor, usually in my legs or my hands, and it just morphed into what I guess you'd call looked like a full like epileptic seizure. But I was fully conscious, like completely conscious. I just couldn't make it stop. Remember the first night, Nanny didn't know what to do. She just took me to the ER, and they gave me some sort of sedative, and I just sort of like calmed down on my own. But then it kept happening over and over again. And they hospitalized me for a little bit. They ended up, all that run around in Children's Hospital, they ended up saying, okay, you don't really have ADHD, you have autism. They called it Asperger's back then, Asperger's syndrome, which is high functioning autism. And that's all the behavioral and the neurological problems. But I remember this one time they hooked me up to a brain scan. And I had an episode during it. And then I remember doctor was sitting there as this, as like because they put the electrodes on. It was like a full like thing, like with electrodes. And I remember like as I was having it, because I'm fully conscious with this going on, and Greg standing right there, and because he could take me to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "This is what," and the doctor was like, "This is fascinating," because he said, "This is what it would look like if you were faking it. This is what it would look like if it were epilepsy, but this is a third, much more rare thing. This is called conversion reaction." What I understood that to mean now is that conversion reaction is when your body is under such emotional strain that it converts the emotional feelings you're feeling into physical symptoms. So, for example, the textbook case is you go through a traumatic event and then you lose your sense of smell, right? Your nerves are fine. There's nothing physically wrong with you, but the trauma of what happened caused such a disruption in your brain and in your body that your brain does not register the smells from your nose nerves anymore. It literally detaches like your brain's perception from your body because the emotional trauma was so great. And that's what was happening to me in 6th grade. I remember they gave me like they just started giving me Klonopin and some as needed medication to try to calm me down because they didn't know what the fuck to do. But nothing helped. They didn't understand what was happening at home. They didn't know what Randy was doing. Sixth grade is when I stopped calling her mom. Because she got high one night. And just started hitting me. Over and over. And she wouldn't stop. And I just looked up her and said, "Mommy, why are you hitting me?" And she paused for a moment, looked me dead in the eyes, and then said, "Any bitch can give birth." And then went back to hitting me. And ever since then, she's been Randy. But they didn't know that. And it hit a head when I was having a bunch of problems one day in class. Just could not stop shaking. They sent me to the office. Mrs. Fritz had already, like the nurse had already given me, the nurse had already given me like my max amount of as needed dose. Mrs. Fritz, Anthony's mom, Anthony was in my class, Mrs. Fritz was his mom, but she also worked in the office, called Randy and said, "We've already given him his maximum and he's still doing this. With your permission, we'd like to give him another pill." So they gave me a full extra dose of the Klonopin. And everything went batshit. I started completely hallucinating everything, and I was not in my right mind at all. Just started seeing spiders and demons everywhere, even after like they managed to get me home. Remember, they drove me down to Cincinnati Children's. No, sorry, that was Mercy. That one was Mercy first. Mercy South had me admitted. Then I got Dr. Vivian. Such a fucking idiot. You know, a story of my life is being surrounded by a whole bunch of well-meaning, well-educated idiots. Because they never asked why I was coming to school bruised. They never asked what was going on at home. They just said they knew it wasn't a physical condition, yet all they fucking gave me was a pill. Even with the Children's Services record that they knew about, didn't do anything. After that, sixth grade was the worst year. After I got back out, they put me on home instruction for a while. So I didn't go to school, but they had a tutor that would come once I can't remember what's his name, a couple times a week, but his name was Todd. He was like a tutor from the school district who would come and like give me like an hour of private lessons just during sixth grade. Because I was supposedly too sick to go to school. But that's not what was happening. Randy realized she could take FMLA to get off work, and part of me wants to believe like she took me to the doctor's office. She legit didn't know what the fuck was wrong with me. There was a part of her that wanted to be the good mom and didn't want a sick kid. That part was real. But then there was the part that would come out when she was high. That I found out when I was at Oakmont why she did what she did. It was because after she got home from testifying in court against John Paul Jones, she looked me in the eye and she said, "I'm sorry, but you have a birthmark in common with him. And whenever I look at you, there's a little part of me that always sees him in you." At least then I understood why. It didn't make sense at the time, but now I'm an adult, it does. Because she wasn't in her right mind when she did it. She never was. She also started having hormone problems. She had chronic fatigue. Fibromyalgia, was in constant pain. Opioids were her way of coping. And the doctors just pushed it and gave her whatever she wanted. Even did the stint where she was on Xyrem, which was the worst fucking drug she was ever on. For those of you that don't know, Xyrem is basically G, the street drug G. She got prescribed that. A bipolar manic depressive got fucking prescribed G because that's how intelligent the doctors in fucking Ohio are. Yeah. So I'm in home instruction, the sixth grade kid, and she's on FMLA to take care of me, but she's just getting high all day, every day. Cycling between her demons and then just puking her guts up and not being able to get out of bed. So there I'm there taking care of her while she's sick. Meanwhile, I'm not allowed to go outside and play. I'm not allowed to go to the grocery store. I can't do anything because no one can know that I'm not sick. I'm trapped in there. Because she just wouldn't stay like that. Remember this one night, she had gotten high and she had passed out, puking and shitting on the toilet upstairs. I was downstairs watching TV with John, and Greg was in his den playing Diablo on the computer. I went upstairs and found her, came back downstairs, told Greg, hey, mom's on the toilet and needs help. And he just didn't respond. Didn't look at me. Didn't acknowledge anything I said. Just kept playing the fucking game. So I said it again. Hey, mommy needs help. Still nothing. So I went upstairs. I was still sore from what had happened that day. And I cleaned her up. Wiped the puke from her mouth. Wiped the shit from her ass. Managed to get her underwear back on her. And just got her back in bed. And then went and cleaned the bathroom so that I could pee. And that was 6th grade for me. But like I said, there was a part of Randy that still wanted to be a good mom. I remember toward the end of 6th grade, I was able to get back in school. And 6th grade is where they decide what track you're on. They either put you in honors, college prep, or academic. That's where they sort you and decide like how much the school district's going to invest in you. And because everything that happened, they put me in college prep. But I remember Randy did go and fight with Mrs. Wagonfield, the principal, to get her to sign off on putting me in honors classes starting in 8th grade, starting in 7th grade in middle school. There really was a part of her that cared, that felt bad for what she knew she was doing, and that desperately still wanted to try to be that good mom that she didn't have. That's why it was so hard. The loving mother, the demon that would come out when she was high that just saw me as the man that raped her and was just trying to get back at him through me, and the washed up addict that was puking and shitting on herself. All the same person. And Craig just never wanted to deal with it. He'd just work, bury himself in the computer. Just left it to me. Left it all on me. Seventh grade started to get worse. Something happened and she had to have a hysterectomy. And that completely fucked with her hormones, so she was just going haywire more often. And just using the drugs more. And she was just constantly hitting me. Somewhere along the way, I learned that if I just squeezed hard enough when I was having a tremor, then they would slow down. And if I could just keep squeezing and just focus all of my effort on squeezing, then eventually just that focus would like make it stop. But in 7th grade, like nothing was functional. And school was hell. At Oakmont, the laundry used to pile up at the bottom of the staircase. So the first floor, there you walk in the front door, there's the living room. Then there's a little hallway off to the side with the bathroom. And then 2 bedrooms, the master bedroom and then the kids' bedroom. But if you go straight forward through the door, there's the kitchen. I mean, there's the dining room and the kitchen. You go through the kitchen, and then there was the little door to the garage. And then the stairs down to the finished basement, which was like the giant family room. And there was the laundry room, which had the cement floor off to the side, and then Greg's den. And then what turned into my corner in the back later on. But all the clothes just piled up at the bottom of the stairs. And we weren't allowed, and John and I weren't allowed to do laundry or dishes or anything. The one time I tried to do laundry, she yelled at me and just went completely the fuck off because I was doing it wrong. Greg never did it. She didn't like doing it. Greg's like, I spent all this time working overtime. Why the fuck do I have to do chores? This is a similar thing with John because he got yelled at for doing the dishes. Me and the dishes is another story too, but we'll get there later. But we had a dog named Spot. And when the dog didn't get let out, he would just go piss on the clothes pile at the bottom of the stairs or in the laundry room. And every morning before I go to school, I just have to go find the cleanest, least piss-stained clothes to go put on to wear. Until one day I went into Mrs. Major's 7th grade English class for 3rd period. First period was band. Second period was Mrs. Lee's geography. We were in trailers at Garfield Elementary because they were doing renovations. Mrs. Lee was Mrs. Major's sister, and she taught geography right next door. But went into Mrs. Major's English class that day. I couldn't smell it and found the best outfit I could. But she did when she walked by me. She asked in front of the whole class if it would be okay if another student came and smelled me to see if the smell was coming from me. I said yes, because I didn't know what else to say. And when I stood up and the kid said, yeah, the smell's coming from him, she didn't know what to do. And I just went into complete humiliation shock. Somehow or another, that led to me getting assigned a social worker. Her name was Pam. She was with Care Case Management, which is a social services company in Hamilton. And I started seeing her once a week. She'd pick me up after school and spend like an hour with me. She'd take me to Golden Corral or something, or to McDonald's or something, just to hang out and talk. Pam really tried her best. She did break a couple of rules. Like, for example, she brought me over to her place to help her fix her computer once just because it was broken, and she knew that I knew them, and I was like so thrilled, like, yeah, I can help you. I can fix your computer. And she was like, I'm not supposed to do this, but okay. Randy cleaned up her act a little bit because of that. But she still kept relapsing, still kept doing the drugs because she couldn't take the pain. She was always in constant pain. constant, never-ending pain. Anyway, there's more, but I am out of energy for tonight. I'll pick up tomorrow with Thanksgiving. I've got so much more to go. I've got to get this out. I've got to get this out before I die. It's the thing when you're a tantric death yogi. Death is something you experience while you're alive. It's not physical bodily death. It's a different kind. But it's one that has to happen. Okay. I'll pick up here tomorrow. Good night.